Shonen doesn't exactly have the best reputation for handling women, so it might surprise you that an excellent example of one done right is also someone who has been accused of being useless fodder and the equivalent of an OnlyFans model. She's also been called Fairy Tail's best girl, a character with remarkable growth and the heart of her series, which is myth and which is reality. Today, I'm going to explore one of shonen's greatest heroines, a damsel who grew powerful enough to summon a god. This might be the most important video I've made to date because so many people have Lucy Heartfilia all wrong, and my goal is to redefine the perception around her. It's not that serious, but I do care, and I have plenty of receipts to back up my claims. To best showcase her growth and why she stands out so much as a heroine, it's important to establish who she is at the beginning of the series. Lucy is the heir to the Heartfilia family, one of the wealthiest in the kingdom of Fiore. Exploring her past is the key to painting a clear picture of who and why she is the person she is when we first meet her. It also kicks things off with how each arc of the story adds different elements to her character and compounds her growth. When you compare her backstory to her peers, it's nowhere near as tragic as being a child slave, realizing you've been raised by ghosts, or watching loved ones sacrifice themselves for you. But that doesn't negate the serious impact it had on her psyche. Growing up in a mansion with seemingly unlimited wealth, she lived a very sheltered life. After her mother's death when she was a child, her father stopped viewing her as a daughter and more like a successor. The closest thing she had to a friend was her celestial spirit Aquarius, a spirit she can summon with a key, who was more of a tough love kind of gal. Living in solitude made her crave adventure, but her naivete kept her from knowing the hardships that come along with that. Never needing to fend for herself, she didn't learn how to, and also, she's a bit gullible. She has some vanity and materialistic traits to her, but can you blame her? If you were a teenager born a gajillionaire, wouldn't you? And even then, it's not like she's hawk to a girl greedy. She's kind because she knows what it's like to be treated otherwise. She yearns for familial connection because that need isn't being met at home. Well, if you're not getting it at home, what are you going to do? Probably seek it out, and that's exactly what she does. This leads to her chance encounter with Natsu, and shortly after, becoming a member of the Fairy Tail Guild. There are consequences to this decision, both short-term and long-term, which will be explored throughout this video. More than any other member of the guild, she struggles with money, and a lot of her early missions with Natsu are only taken so she can pay her rent. Perhaps being broke is why her clothes always fall off. She had to settle for the cheap stuff. She tries using sex appeal to get discounts, and hilariously, this is also a long-term storyline with a legitimate payoff later in this video. She could have stayed home and enjoyed riches her whole life. The fact that she didn't tells us a lot about her. She willingly chooses poverty with friends over riches that come with neglect. It's noticeable early on that her proper upbringing makes her feel out of place in such a rowdy guild. It's the complete opposite of everything she's been accustomed to. There's a consistent gag about members of the guild breaking into her house, which is funny, but also important. These hooligans breaking in and pushing her boundaries is what breaks down her walls and makes her feel comfortable within the guild. It's one of the many ways she grows closer to Natsu, who's been trying to fill a void in his own life. Despite the initial discomfort, she has no issue making friends. I think this stems from her having been around celestial spirits for so long. All their different personality types helped her become adaptable to all kinds of people. It doesn't take long for others like Gray, Urza, Mira, and Levi to all grow close with her. Friends aside, make no mistake about it, at this point, she is a damsel. She places her faith in people she's never met, nearly gets sex trafficked, and in the second episode, she struggles with the creature that Makao of all people can defeat 19 of. While she has unique magic in being able to summon celestial spirits, she can generally only summon one at a time. She doesn't seek out violence like her comrades do, in fact, she actively tries to avoid it. She herself acknowledges that she's weak. When she first meets Urza, she borderline shits her pants. Her naivete puts her in dangerous situations that Natsu has to save her from, and you'll see why this reliance on him is important as we keep going. During Lullaby, she's told to chase a culprit and immediately loses sight of them. On Galuna Island, she sets up traps which do more to Natsu than the bad guys. She then gets arguably her biggest success to date by tickling a rat's foot and then almost winning a fight against Sherry before needing Urza to save her. So to this point, she appears to be a liability. And guess what? That's intentional and the perfect setup for the next arc, Phantom Lord. You may not have noticed, while she hasn't done much physically, she is progressing in that area. She's added spirits to her repertoire, she's gained experience, and slowly but surely, she is growing more capable. She has provided value, just in other ways. Her love of writing allowed them to decode the Daybreak book on a job. She was able to see through Bora's spells. We see time and time again that the relationships she fosters with others circles back to help her or the guild in dire situations, though she doesn't see it that way. When Phantom Lord, one of the most powerful guilds, invades Fairy Tail, we find out they want Lucy. Cool, join the club. To her, this is a nightmare. She's loved her time with the guild. It's become her home and the family she's desperately craved. But she also believes she's been nothing but a burden to them. Her guildmates have literally been crucified over her. All of her self-doubt kicks in, and if it'll spare her friends pain, she'll turn herself over to Phantom Lord. Why would the guild care if she left anyway? It's a logical question for her to ask because she wasn't valued at home. If her father didn't, why would this band of misfits with no blood connections value her? That question is answered not by her, but by everyone else in Fairy Tail. Even with threats to their livelihood, it's unanimous. Not a single member would dare give her up, regardless of the consequences. Urza says it best, they would never betray her like that. You'd have to kill them first. For the first time since her mother died, Lucy is part of a family and feels loved. As everything plays out, this all ties back to her father, Jude. The entire reason this is happening is because he hired Phantom Lord to bring her home. Even though she left, her father refuses to let her move on. The guild tries their best to protect her, but she's captured anyway. Gajiel predictably beats her ass, but knowing she has the support of her friends, she remains mentally tough. Her defiance leads to an even bigger beating, but if she can hold out, she knows her friends will save her. Her faith in Natsu, someone she has continued to grow closer to, never wanes, and he rewards that. There's a cool moment where she takes a literal leap of faith that would absolutely kill her if that gamble didn't pay off, but she calls out for Natsu, and exactly like she expected, he swoops in to save her. For their attack on Fairy Tail and capture of Lucy, Phantom Lord is completely wiped out. If you're her, you couldn't feel happier knowing how much these people care for you. But this started with her, and she needs to make things right. Without explanation, she goes back to her father and confronts him. He will no longer be interfering in her life. Her strength of character is highlighted here, and she has a new level of confidence knowing her friends have her back. It's also funny because Natsu and some others followed her because they thought she was leaving to spare them, when really, they inspired her to take action. We're going to take a brief detour here and talk about the elephant in the room. Let's talk about the fan service. Is Lucy over-sexualized? Yes, absolutely. She loses her clothes like she's paid for it. Hell, since this video began, she hasn't gone a minute without doing so. But there is a difference between being a fan service prop and a fleshed out character who happens to have a lot of fan service, and she is undoubtedly the latter. As I continue, you'll see plenty of evidence to support that. In the Loki arc, we see even more of her strength, not her skin. Of that, we've seen plenty. Loki has a reputation for hating celestial wizards. When he's around her, he makes a joke that his time is running out. But this is Lucy, she's good with people, and this felt off, so she digs deeper. Turns out, Loki's not human, but a celestial spirit, one who had been abused by his master, and after he stood up to her, she ended up getting killed. This violates spirit law, and for that, his punishment is death. As Lucy learns this, he abruptly leaves Fairy Tail. With the prior arc cementing her as truly part of the guild, she feels compelled to chase after him. Despite coming face to face with the Celestial Spirit King, who is there to pass judgment on Loki, she stands up to him. She summons all of her spirits in defiance. Her conviction, her relationships with them, and her caring nature sways the king, and he allows Loki to live. Lucy receives his key as she'll be his new master, though she simply calls him her friend. Even though she could have died, it was worth it to save Loki. Her improved confidence begins to show in her fights now too. In the Tower of Heaven, she and Juvia face Hawk, a member of Trinity Raven, who is easily the toughest foe she's faced so far in the show. During that fight, she has to face off with a mind-corrupted Juvia, but manages to use her intellect to save her, and together, they win the fight. In the Battle of Fairy Tail, she's instantly turned to stone by Evergreen, and you're like, here we go. All that progress only to become a damsel to be saved again. But when she's freed, she keeps the momentum going and picks up another impressive victory over Bixlo with the help of Loki. This was a big deal. Bixlo had already defeated Grey. Gajiel is particularly stunned by her victory and even says he thought she was a chump. Then she goes on to play a role in unifying the guild to take out Loxus's Thunder Palace and save the town. It's a nice stretch of victories for her and proves she's coming along. Another important note here is when she's performing in the Fantasia parade, her father is watching from the crowd, and it's not the last we see of him. While she's getting more powerful, that doesn't mean her other strengths have been diminished either. In the Erasion Caesark, she watches over a poisoned Urza. She has an emotional fight against Angel, who is controlling Ares, a spirit that's friends with Loki. This is the best example so far of her all-around value to the guild. To spare Loki's feelings from fighting his friend, she tries sending him back to the spirit realm. This fight, where she summons multiple spirits, #progress, drains her to the point of exhaustion and she collapses. She even offers up her life to have Angel relinquish that spirit, and this is so moving that another one of Angel's spirits, Gemini, refuses to put Lucy down. It wasn't her power that saved the day, but her kindness and dedication to her friends. Hell, she even saves Natsu at one point, which is a little repayment for him saving her so many times. For her efforts in this arc, she gains 3 spirits. In Edelus, it's again her compassion towards others that makes her useful. She no longer avoids conflict. If others are being mistreated, she's going to intervene, which leads to her protecting Coco, who was an enemy, but swapped sides in that fight. We also see the continued running gag of Lucy using her sex appeal, here failing to seduce the bad guys. Every so often, we see Natsu come up with these seductive plans for her, which seem to exist simply to remind us she has enough vanity to always believe these plans might work. The next arc, Tenro, is another monumentally important one for Lucy's character. First, we dive deeper into how her relationships with fellow guild members matter. Kana comes to her before the S-Class exams and explains she's failed her trial year after year, which has left her heartbroken and insecure about her standing in the guild. She could have gone to anyone, but she chose Lucy because she knew Lucy would be there for her. And when she goes to Tenro, she chooses Lucy to be her partner, where together they successfully defeat Freed and Bixlo and grow closer. Of course Lucy would help Kana. We saw her doubt her own standing in the guild earlier, and they share a lot in common with their unresolved daddy issues. Speaking of, before they went to Tenro, Lucy's father came to her begging for money after blowing his fortune. What a great dad. Even so, when she hears he's in danger, she goes out of her way to try and protect him, and he finally realizes how much he's screwed up as a man and as a father. Back on Tenro, the Dark Guild Grimoire heart attacks. Lucy picks up another impressive victory over Caprico, which boiled down to the trust she shares with Loki, and then she gains Caprico as a spirit. We're seeing her put together some more momentum as a fighter, and it's not because she's OP, but because she's creative in the use of her spirits and because of the faith and teamwork she shares with her friends. As you'd expect from being around Natsu all the time, he does rub off on her a bit. Not only does her confidence grow, but she's become more willing to fight than when she joined. Against Kane, after Natsu saves her, she returns the favor. She plays a role in the fight against Hades, which is the first time she's played a legitimate role against a big bad in the series so far. But as we see so often for Lucy, where there are ups, downs tend to follow. She, along with the rest of the guild, are attacked on the island by the dragon Acnologia, and while they survive, they are in stasis for 7 years. When they return, and I've said it a million times that I wish that was dragged out, unlike everyone else, Lucy actually does suffer consequences. Of everyone on Tenro, she's the only one who loses something precious. It makes her so much more relatable that she can't overcome everything in front of her with strength like a Natsu or Urza, and that she suffers real permanent losses. Upon returning, she decides to go visit her father, and if you haven't guessed it by now, she learns during her absence, he passed away only a month before she returned. Despite their complicated history, she loved him, and it still hurts, especially when you learn he'd turned his life around and become a good man, something she wasn't able to experience for herself. In typical fairy tale fashion, your heartstrings get tugged on when you learn that her father sent her birthday letters every year she was gone, and had made sure her rent was paid the entire time so she'd have a home to come back to. He always had faith she'd return. After her father's death, she's noticeably softer as a person. In the Grand Magic Games, she's of vital importance, and yet it's an arc marred by consistent failure. To the surprise of many, including her, Makarov chooses her to be one of the members representing Fairy Tail in the tournament, which is a direct acknowledgement of her progress. Even though she came into the tournament having trained with Caprico and achieving second origin strength, against Flare, she's defeated. Against Minerva, she's defeated. And while she is the most important character in this arc overall, during the tournament itself, we see her insecurities over this repeated failure play out in real time. How would you feel if you were chosen to represent your guild in this tournament of strength, to support your guildmates who have suffered for the last 7 years in your absence, only to lose every match you're in? Especially when you see everyone else pushing forward and pulling off these awesome victories. Almost every character who competes either wins or is redeemed in the Grand Magic Games, except Lucy. We know this gets to her because she cries alone after the first defeat, and after the second, she lies heartbroken in her hospital bed. But as always, there is perception and there is reality, which is a common issue with her character. Yes, she lost both of her matches, but there's context to this. Against Flare, she overcame outside interference and showed how powerful she was with her final attack, which was about to win until John Cena's heel turn screwed her out of the victory. In the naval battle, you kind of forget because she took the beating of a lifetime, but she hung in there, took second place, and those points were necessary to winning the games. Outside of the matches themselves, she still made a difference. Her connection with her spirits makes a big impact on Yukino, who is part of a rival guild. So much so that she offers Lucy her celestial spirits. Lucy turns her down. She treats hers like family and can tell Yukino feels the same way. The warmth she extends to others, friend or foe, is something we've seen time and time again, and part of what makes her special. We get to see more of them together when they are kidnapped by the kingdom, and once again we see her seductive tactics fail after Natsu rescues her and suggests it. Eventually they are urged by the kingdom to use their abilities to open the Eclipse Gate, which inadvertently allows dragons into the present, and it takes their combined strength to close it. Except the dragons are still destroying the kingdom, and she's incapable of destroying the gate, which would send them back. It's Natsu who ends up doing it, and you see how much always being there for her means in this great moment. Natsu has been, and is, her security. There's a point in that arc where we are introduced to a Lucy from the future, one who opened the gate and then watched it wipe out everything she holds dear. Like in her youth, she was alone, but Fairy Tail changed her for the better, and you see that with her tremendous resilience to not only survive, but come back in time and change our Lucy's future, even if it resulted in her own death. It wasn't ours, but that Lucy, per usual, suffered real consequences, and her send-off is beautiful. Also a cool detail is Natsu becomes far more protective of our Lucy after witnessing future Lucy's death. In case you hadn't seen it enough, we get another example of her winning over an old foe in Sun Village. Lucy mends the fences with Flare, leading to them teaming up to defeat treasure hunters near her hometown. So far, we've seen Lucy gain experience, confidence, strength, build relationships, and soften as a person. We've also seen her take brutal beatings, lose loved ones, and fail time and time again. During Tartaros, all of this ties together. After a spell called Alegria is used, everyone in Fairy Tail is immobilized. Well, everyone except Lucy. For the first time, she has no Natsu, no backup. The entire guild's fate rests in the hands of a girl who has only been in it for about a year. So how does she respond? She fights off multiple Tartaros demons despite taking tremendous punishment and pushes herself to her absolute limit, summoning 3 celestial spirits at once. Except This is Tartaros, and one demon is powerful enough to defeat her, let alone 2 or 3. Nothing ever comes easy for her. Everything she gets, she earns, and does so through pain or heartbreak. There's only one way out, and it'll come at a cost. She can summon the Celestial Spirit King, someone powerful enough to turn the tide in the fight, but to do so, she has to sacrifice her first friend and the only mother figure she's had most of her life, Aquarius. Again, I say, put yourself in her shoes. Would you sacrifice your best friend or your mom to save the rest of your family? That's the decision she's asked to make. And while it's tragic, the reality is, it's necessary. Aquarius says it herself. Natsu isn't coming to save her this time. Heartbroken, she breaks Aquarius's key, severing her connection to the human realm, and the Celestial King arrives, breaking the Alegria spell. There's no other way to put it. When the life of the guild was on the line, Lucy stepped up and saved the day. It took everything in her arsenal, her strength, her creativity, her convictions, all of it. She pushed past her summoning limits and fought through the pain of losing a friend to do it, but she succeeded. Her entire story built up to this success, and it's amazing. For so much of the series, she's been the damsel who needed saving, but bit by bit, she's grown strong enough that when the roles were reversed, she could return the favor. They can rely on her just as much as she can rely on them. After everything, she's understandably exhausted. Demons from Tartaros surround her and look to enact their revenge. But one by one, Gajiel, Juvia, Gray, and finally Natsu all come to her aid. It's a really cool moment after everything she did to bring them back, and they all acknowledge how incredible she is. And while saving the guild was her greatest success to date, once again, Lucy suffers consequences in a way others simply don't. Aquarius was her oldest friend, and now she's lost the 2 people who've been connected to her the longest. Not only that, after that fight, how is she rewarded? By being abandoned by Natsu, and the guild is disbanded. She worked so hard to save something that minutes later no longer existed. Imagine making the biggest sacrifice of your life only to be met with that disappointment after. How would you feel? An entire year goes by before she sees her friends again. And while many would wallow in pity, she doesn't. She becomes a successful journalist at Sorcerer Weekly. She uses that job to keep tabs on all her fellow Fairy Tail members. We've now seen her abilities become an asset, but what's always been exceptional about her is the connection she formed with everyone in the guild. In no time at all, she became the guild's heart, and that's proven in a bit. During that year apart, she also put in work. She can now harness the ability of her celestial spirits to enhance her own strength. She wasn't resting on her laurels. She continued to grow, and for the first time, she's added being a physical threat to her repertoire. I give her credit for even coming up with this in the first place. That wasn't the obvious route to take her abilities, but again, her creativity shines through. When Natsu eventually returns, and per regulations, she loses her clothes again, they set out to bring back their closest friends, and like I said before, she's the heart of the guild, so it's fitting that she's the one who brings everyone back together. Fairy Tail is back in business. The final arc continues to show all the different things that make Lucy one of a kind in Fairy Tail. One of the key points is her forming a connection with Brandish, who would have been a problem to deal with, but instead her wishy-washy attitude really favors Fairy Tail and helps turns the tide of the war. We saw that with Coco earlier, as well as Flare and Yukino. It's what Lucy does, though they do end up fighting for Natsu's sake at one point, as she should. Go Team Nalu. Perhaps more importantly, we finally see a seduction plan work. See, everything with her character has a payoff. She and Natsu face off against Jacob, and because he's a huge prude, their exaggerated flirting and her skimpy outfits allow them to defeat him. Literary genius, I tell ya. Throughout the rest of this arc, she saves Natsu numerous times, the inverse of how their relationship started. The most important of these is when she rewrites the book of END, sparing him from annihilation and tying all the way back to her love of books and using her decoding skills, even though she has to fight through a demonic spell scorching her to do so. And then for good measure, the originally weak, naive rich girl who just wanted to fit in is the one who confidently brings a town together, leading a kingdom to stop the biggest threat the world has ever seen. Throughout Fairy Tail, Lucy Heartfilia goes from follower to leader, weak to strong, timid to confident, naive to experienced, reliant to capable, and she matures while retaining the kindness and determined mindset she always had. What makes her special as a character is that all of her growth is incremental. Ups are followed by downs. Guess what? That's human. Unlike her monster-like teammates, she doesn't win by overpowering opponents. She can't train for a day and become a god. She is the definition of a human in a world full of monsters, and because of that, she grows like a human. She gets beat down, but keeps getting back up because that's the only way for her to improve. At first, she can only summon one spirit. That becomes 2, then 3. Then she learns how to channel their power to herself, and in 100 Year Quest, she can even combine her spirit's power. Hell, spoiler here, but in the manga, she can even summon a god. She's not useless. She does have immense growth in more than just her chest, and without her, the series simply doesn't work. She is a beacon of feminine strength and one of the best females in shonen. I hope now that you know the truth, you think so too. With that, I'm out.